I stared at the bright red paper clutched in my hand, the official HOA logo glaring at me like an accusation. The text was typed in bold block letters, almost as if they anticipated outrage and wanted to yell it at us first. Mandatory on OTIC effective. Immediately, all garage doors must remain open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily. Non-compliance will result in a $200 daily fine. I read it again, then again. It didn't make sense. In 5 years of living in Sycamore Heights, I dealt with my share of HOA madness warnings for lawn length, mailbox color compliance, even fines for wind chimes that were too whimsical. But this was surreal. I stormed into my house and slapped the paper onto the kitchen counter with enough force to make my coffee mug jump. The clock read 8:23 a.m. and the day had already turned sideways. I barely had time to process the insanity when my phone rang. It was Diane from across the street. "Did you get the notice?" She snapped without even a hello. "I did," I said, "and I can't decide whether to laugh or scream." She exhaled hard. "Marcus is livid. You know how much woodworking equipment we have in our garage? Thousands of dollars. Eleanor's lost it." "Eleanor Pritchard lost it a long time ago," I muttered. Eleanor, our HOA president, was a local legend for all the wrong reasons. Immaculate bob haircut, icy glare, and a clipboard permanently welded to her hand. She once fined old Mr. Jenkins for planting marigolds that clashed with the neighborhood palette, and issued a violation to the Rodriguez family for leaving their trash bin out 12 minutes past the 24-hour window, but forcing residents to keep their garage doors wide open from morning to night. That was next-level lunacy. Did they say why? I asked Diane. Something about illegal garage apartments. I laughed bitterly. So instead of investigating a few offenders, we're all being punished? Sounds like Eleanor logic. I peeked through my blinds. A small crowd had already formed outside. Neighbors clutched the same red notices in their hands, gesturing animatedly. A few pointed toward the HOA building, a converted model home at the entrance of our subdivision, and there she was, Eleanor striding confidently from driveway to driveway like a self-appointed warden. She was flanked by a man I vaguely recognized as Ted, one of the HOA's newer committee members. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My doorbell rang 20 minutes later. I didn't even need to check the peephole. "Good afternoon," Eleanor said as I opened the door, her smile about as warm as a tax audit. "Just ensuring everyone received today's notice." "I did," I said calmly, even though my hand still trembled with anger. "And I have serious concerns about security. You're asking us to leave our homes wide open to the world." Eleanor's smile faltered. "The board voted unanimously after discovering illegal rental units in 3 garages. This is a zoning compliance measure." I raised an eyebrow. "So, everyone suffers because 3 people broke the rules?" "Rules exist for a reason," she snapped. "Open your garage door by 8 a.m. tomorrow or face fines." And with that, she turned on her heel and marched away to the next house. I didn't. Wait. I called Jack, my brother-in-law, who also happened to be the chief of police for our neighboring town. When I explained the rule, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "That's practically an invitation to get robbed," he finally said. "You can't leave valuables exposed all day." "Can they actually enforce this?" I asked. HOAs can be powerful, but they can't create unsafe living conditions. Send me the notice. I'll take a closer look. I emailed him a photo immediately. That night, I watched from my front porch as neighbors began dragging expensive equipment from garages into living rooms. Bikes, power tools, camping gear all shuffled inside like the world's saddest fire drill. Some covered their things with tarps, others installed makeshift motion cameras. A few just stood in their driveways, helpless and angry. just after sunset. There was a knock at my door. Marcus stood there in slacks and a polo shirt, thick folder tucked under one arm and reading glasses halfway down his nose. "I've been reviewing the HOA bylaws," he said without preamble, "and this policy wasn't enacted properly." "Come in," I said quickly. In my living room, under the yellow glow of the table lamp, he flipped through the thick binder. "Security related. Changes require a 2/3 majority vote from homeowners," he said, tapping the page. "The board can't pass something like this on their own, especially not in an emergency meeting. So it's not enforceable?" "In theory, no," he said. "But Eleanor is betting no one will take her to court." I exhaled sharply. And she's probably right. Most people can't afford a legal battle. "Which is why she does whatever she wants," Marcus replied grimly. "But something's off." "She's usually controlling, yes, but this is reckless, even for her." Sleep was impossible that night. I tossed and turned, imagining burglars casing garages like drive-through menus. At 7:55 a.m., I was already dressed and pacing by the front window. One by one, garage doors across Sycamore Heights lifted like synchronized dancers in a grotesque HOA ballet. Mine stayed shut. At 8:17 a.m., Eleanor appeared again right on time with Ted in tow. He looked pale and tired, holding a clipboard like it was radioactive. "You're in violation," Eleanor declared, scribbling without breaking eye contact. "I'm exercising my right to security," I replied. "The policy was improperly enacted. We had an emergency board meeting. It's final. I want to see the meeting minutes and voting records." "They'll be available at next month's meeting," she said with a snarl. "Meanwhile, your fines begin today." As they walked away, a white van slowly drove past. The driver, male, late 20s, sunglasses, was clearly looking into garages. He circled the block once, twice. My stomach dropped. That afternoon, our neighborhood Facebook group lit up like a Christmas tree. A new page appeared, closed the doors, and within hours, it had 50 members. My post about the van was shared over 70 times. People were scared, angry, and they were organizing. That night, I invited a few key neighbors to my house: Diane, Marcus, and a couple others from the new group. We spread out around my living room with laptops, printouts, and HOA newsletters scattered on the coffee table. "We need to know why this is happening now," Diane said, her paralegal brain firing at full power. "Eleanor's always been obnoxious, but this is strategic, calculated." Marcus, flipping through HOA budget statements I had requested months ago, suddenly froze. "Look at this," he said. "Landscaping expenses have tripled since last year. All paid to Pritchard Enterprises." "Her husband's company," I said, eyebrows shooting up. Marcus nodded grimly. "And there's another name, Secure Tech Solutions. They share the same business address." Before we could process that, the doorbell rang. It was Ted. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I shouldn't be here," he whispered, glancing around. "But you need to know the garage door rule isn't about rentals." "What is it about then?" I asked, stepping aside to let him in. Ted's hand shook as he spoke. "Eleanor's brother-in-law works for SecureTech. They're using this to scope out the neighborhood. Next month, they plan to offer discounted home security systems through the HOA." I blinked. "You're saying she's creating fear to sell her family's product?" Ted nodded. "They think they can present it like a solution after the break-ins they're expecting." My jaw dropped. "That's illegal," Diane said flatly. "I've already said too much," Ted whispered, then disappeared into the darkness like a man on borrowed time. The morning after Ted's warning, I stepped out to get the mail and froze. A police cruiser sat outside the Thompson house. Yellow tape fluttered in the morning breeze. Diane came running across the street, clutching her phone. They were robbed, she said breathlessly, while they were at the grocery store. Garage was wide open. I rushed over. Mrs. Thompson stood beside her husband, shaking as she spoke to an officer. Bikes, power tools, his pressure washer all gone, she murmured. I scanned the street. Half the garages still gaped open like hollow mouths, vulnerable. And exposed. This is exactly what we warned about, I muttered. A second officer walked by with a clipboard. We're already getting calls from other parts of the neighborhood, he told his partner. Same pattern. Open garage, valuables gone. Someone's targeting them. And there it was. The nightmare we'd all seen coming playing out in real time. Only Eleanor Pritchard still refused to blink. Around noon, I spotted Mr. Rodriguez trying to close his garage. His teen daughter stood beside him, nervously looking up the street. A man in a hoodie had been spotted earlier, circling their home on a bicycle. Eleanor showed up before the door could even fully lower. You're in violation, she snapped, physically blocking the control panel. My tools are in there, Mr. Rodriguez argued, voice rising. Someone's already been by twice today. The policy is clear, Eleanor replied coolly. Non-compliance will result in You hearing yourself? I shouted from my driveway, phone recording. You're endangering people's homes. Eleanor turned to me, her expression souring. You're violating multiple clauses, encouraging non-compliance. I could raise your fine again. Go ahead, I said, holding my phone high. Let's make you famous. Eleanor stormed away. Without another word, I uploaded the clip to the Close the Doors group. It had 200 views within the hour. By nightfall, it hit 3,000. That's when I knew the tide was turning. The next morning, the knock on my door came sharp and early. It was Jack, my brother-in-law, wearing his full police chief uniform, gold badge gleaming, clipboard in hand. You ready? He asked. Ready to tear this circus down, I replied. We drove the short distance to the HOA office. It sat at the edge of Sycamore Heights, an old model home turned administrative building, surrounded by well-manicured hedges and false charm. Inside, Eleanor sat at a sleek glass desk, flipping through paperwork with deliberate confidence. Her eyes narrowed when she looked up and saw the badge. Chief Williams, she said slowly. What brings you here? Official business, Jack replied, his voice calm but firm. We're investigating a series of thefts that may be connected to your recent policy change. Eleanor blinked. The garage policy is an internal. Oh, a matter? Not when your decisions directly create unsafe conditions, Jack replied. Multiple break-ins, all garages left open, all within 48 hours of your notice. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, lips pressed thin. We had valid reasons. I stepped forward. Illegal garage rentals? Then why target the entire neighborhood? Instead of dealing with individual violations? Before she could answer, her assistant Megan slipped in. The meeting minutes, ma'am, she whispered, placing a folder on the desk. I leaned over and caught a glimpse. $45,000 to Pritchard Enterprises. $27,000 for entrance maintenance. Then another vendor name, Secure Tech Solutions. Same. Mailing address. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting reading material, I said softly. Eleanor slammed the folder shut. We're done here. I'll have our attorney reach out. Jack remained unmoved. Actually, I've spoken to the district attorney. They're looking into potential financial misconduct, especially cases where board members direct HOA funds to family businesses without competitive bidding. Comp Kellyanner paled. That's absurd. Jack tapped the folder. We'll see. In the meantime, I'm placing an official request to suspend the garage door policy pending further investigation. Megan, clearly rattled, fumbled with another stack of papers and accidentally knocked one loose dot. It slid across the desk toward me. Subject: Line, Secure Tech HOA presentation plan. Target date, August 15th. I smiled. Planning to implement a security solution right after creating a security crisis? Megan looked like she might cry. Eleanor looked like she might explode. This meeting is over. She snapped. We stepped out into the sun, leaving Eleanor fuming in her glass box. Jack looked thoughtful as we walked to the car. She's cornered, but we need public pressure too. Remember Karen from high school, the journalist? She's working local investigations now. I'll send her everything we've got. That afternoon, I organized a community emergency meeting at the town library. We needed a united front, and proof that this wasn't paranoia. 70-8 homeowners showed up. More than half the neighborhood. Marcus took the stage first, laying out the bylaw violations. The Thompsons shared their burglary story, bringing some residents to tears. Then I stepped up and connected the dots. Pritchard Enterprises. Secure Tech. Same address, same family, same scheme. I stopped short of direct accusations, but the room didn't need them. The message was clear. By the end of the night, the crowd voted unanimously. Demand a full third-party audit of HOA. Finances. Suspend the garage policy immediately. Call for emergency board elections. Eleanor didn't show, but two of her known supporters were in the back, and they left early, looking extremely uncomfortable. The next morning at 7 a.m., my door shook from pounding fists. I opened it to find Ted, Eleanor's most timid committee member, panting on my porch. She's stepping down, he blurted. My eyes widened. What? Her attorney convinced her. Said it's better to resign quietly than face charges later. I stared at him, stunned. And the audit? It's happening. Jack called in city oversight. The board's voting to approve the investigation this afternoon. What about the security contract? Ted swallowed hard. Canceled. Secure Tech's rep was furious. Said he was promised a community-wide contract. I almost laughed. Guess he'll have to find another shady neighborhood. Ted nodded and backed away. Just be careful. Eleanor's not the kind to go quietly. He left, and I stood on my porch as the sun rose over Sycamore Heights. Garage doors remained shut. No warning letters. No fines, no Eleanor, just neighbors breathing a little easier. The following evening, word spread like wildfire across Sycamore Heights. Eleanor Pritchard had officially resigned. The board issued a generic statement, citing personal reasons and unexpected health complications. But no one believed that the real cause was pressure, legal, social, and moral. It had reached a boiling point she could no longer suppress. Thanks to Jack's involvement, the HOA was now under temporary oversight by the city. And with our neighborhood meeting results in hand, the board had no choice but to approve an emergency audit of the association's finances. Marcus, ever the methodical judge, volunteered to liaise with the city's auditing firm. Diane took on public communications. I was voted to head community outreach, tasked with keeping our neighbors updated and organized. The momentum was real, tangible. You could feel it in every driveway conversation, every Facebook thread, every house that finally kept its garage door shut without fear of retaliation. For the first time in years, people weren't whispering about Eleanor behind blinds. They were standing together. The auditors didn't take long. By the second week, we had our first major findings, and they were worse than any of us expected. Over $190,000 in HOA funds had been funneled over the past 18 months into Pritchard Enterprises and its affiliates. Landscaping, gate maintenance, signage upgrades, beautification projects, all heavily inflated and all tied to Eleanor's husband's company. But the real bombshell? Secure Tech Solutions. The audit revealed a contract in waiting already. pre-approved by Eleanor and two other board members for a $320,000 5-year security system package to be installed throughout the neighborhood. Ted had been right. The garage door rule wasn't just intimidation, it was the setup for a sales pitch. Worse still, Megan, Eleanor's assistant, quietly came forward with a USB drive of files she'd secretly copied over the past year. Emails, scanned invoices, meeting notes. It was all there. One line from an email stood out, greater than fear cells, especially when you control the policy that causes it. Sent by Eleanor to her brother-in-law at Secure Tech. The documents were turned over to the district attorney. The mood in the neighborhood shifted from relief to shock. We had known it was bad, but not this bad. Jack kept his promise. He sent everything: financial records, Megan's files, Ted's anonymous statements to Karen Liu, a local investigative reporter from Channel 4 News. Karen showed up at my house the next day with her camera crew. We did a full interview: the notice, the intimidation, the policy, the break-ins, the audit, and Eleanor's resignation. That night, the story aired under the headline, "Greater than Garage Door Tyranny. HOA President Resigns Amid Corruption Probe in Sycamore Heights." It was like watching a volcano erupt. News outlets picked it up statewide. Social media lit up. Former residents of Sycamore Heights came out of the woodwork, sharing horror stories of Eleanor's reign. One person even claimed she fined them for having mismatched outdoor Christmas lights. Local politicians weighed in, condemning HOA overreach and promising legislative reform for better oversight of association funds. By the next morning, Eleanor's once pristine reputation was in tatters. Her LinkedIn vanished. Her Facebook was deactivated. Even her real estate license, which we didn't know she had, was under review by the state licensing board. Karma was arriving. And it wasn't in a good mood. Within 3 weeks, the district attorney filed formal charges. Eleanor Pritchard was indicted on misappropriation of HOA funds, conflict of interest, conspiracy to commit fraud, willful endangerment tied to the break-ins. Her brother-in-law, head of Secure Tech Solutions, was also charged as a co-conspirator. Meanwhile, the Sycamore Heights board was fully disbanded, pending a special election. We held that election on a breezy Saturday morning at the community center. Lawn chairs lined the sidewalk. Kids played tag. Tables with fresh-baked cookies and voter sign-up sheets welcomed residents with optimism and humor. For the first time in years, people smiled freely. Marcus was elected as the new HOA president by a landslide. Diane was voted VP. I became communications chair. Together, we rewrote policies, reinstated transparency, and issued refunds to residents who had been unfairly fined under Eleanor's rule, including the now infamous garage door fines. One by one, we started to mend what had been broken. 6 weeks after Eleanor's downfall, Sycamore Heights was barely recognizable, and I mean that in the best way. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years now greeted each other with jokes and shared memories of the chaos we survived. The Facebook group, once known as Close the Doors, was renamed Sycamore Strong. Gone were the clipboard patrols. Gone were the 8 a.m. door checks. Gone were the red notices threatening $200 a day fines. Instead, there were community cleanup days, potluck dinners, even a weekend security workshop hosted by Jack himself, where residents learned to set up cameras, motion lights, and neighborhood watch protocols on their own terms. Eleanor, last we heard, had sold her home and moved in with a cousin out of state. Her name had become a cautionary tale in HOA reform circles across the country. And as for that little red notice that started it, Allie framed it. It hangs in my hallway now, a reminder of what happens when good people stand up, speak out, and close the doors on corruption.